hypocrisy of Bush and Blair as they say they're bombing their way to peace. It's a great pleasure in introducing George to speak at opening rally. I'd like to give him a warm welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair, brothers and sisters, comrades and friends. It's an honour to speak at your opening rally alongside my friends Alan Green, Jill Hubbard, Colin Fox. I see one of the newspapers said in the week that Colin and I had been spotted having talks. In fact, we were walking around a hotel in the Gorbals so that I could smoke, because that's illegal in Scotland now. And our talks constituted an earnest discussion on the train timetables from Carlisle this morning so that I could be here in time for this opening rally. But there was no need for Colin and me to have talks, because we are comrades with the same background, with some differences, like everyone has differences inside the SSP, between the SSP and other forces on the left. But we are united on much more than that which divides us. And that's why I was absolutely honoured to be invited to address this rally, and I'm very pleased to be here. Now we know, although if you'd read my book 2 years ago, you would have known earlier that George Bush is in direct communion with God. It's funny, the story that broke on the front page of all the newspapers this week, breaking news. I published it in my book 2 years ago, but as the comrade who came to pick me up at the station pointed out, nobody believes you. But the Palestinian leadership told me this story at the time that it happened, and I reported it. And I said at the time, now we know why George Bush speaks in tongues, because he's in direct conversation with the Almighty. Couldn't make it up. This is the reasoning of every serial killer in history. From Columbine to Dunblane High School, they were all hearing voices. And in a way, what Bush has done is just Dunblane and Columbine multiplied by many hundreds or thousands of times. Instead of shooting up one school library, he's been shooting up thousands of them. Instead of shooting up one school gymnasium, he's been shooting up thousands of them. And now we know it's because God told him to do it. Well, the men in white coats had better take President Bush away before God speaks to him anymore, because where is he going to tell him to strike next? At least Bush has the excuse that he's an imbecile. What's Tony Blair's excuse? What is Tony Blair doing there, hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, with the most right-wing president the United States of America has ever had? An Oxford graduate, a man who's supposed to be the leader of a Labour Party, has shackled himself into the back seat of a car driven by a drunk driver, who's determined to use that hot ticket to Armageddon, which he and the rapturous hordes of the American evangelical fundamentalist neoconservative right have in their sweaty palms. And it's deeply, dismayingly worrying, surely, for any sentient being in the land, whether left or right in Britain, that the destiny of the world is in the hands of a man who's hearing voices and speaking in tongues. But as I say, What about my erstwhile colleagues in the ranks of the Labour Party in Parliament? On those benches that I often see a shiver run along looking for a spine to run up. When are we going to hear from Michael Connarty, from Mark Lazarevich, from Ian Davidson, from any of those supposedly former left-wing members of the Labour Party that up with this they will not put any longer? When are they going to speak? And of course the answer is probably never, but even if they did, there's no longer anybody left in the Labour Party to listen. Tony Blair inherited a Labour Party from John Smith that had 500,000 members and was on its way to victory in the general election in 1997. He said he'd double the membership. In fact, he's halved the membership and more. Its membership is falling like a stone. A third of the constituency Labour parties didn't attend the recent New Labour conference in Brighton. But we know who did. We know that every corporation in the world descended on the Labour conference. And whereas once they would have been outside in the cold or queuing for visitors' tickets, this time they were the sponsors of the conference. I'm not making this up. There were fringe meetings at the Labour conference on the environment sponsored by the oil companies and the nuclear fuels companies. There were fringe meetings at the Labour conference on third world poverty sponsored by Nestle and the other multinational corporations responsible for third world poverty and underdevelopment. There were meetings at the Labour Party conference on international peace sponsored by weapons companies like British Aerospace.